Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. Okay, little fumble. I don't know if you noticed when I was doing this, I put the belt in upside down. You want the teeth on the belt facing down at the anchor points because they are going to go under these pulleys. I'm going to go ahead and show you as I'm putting this together. And as you're doing this also, remember you need a left and a right. So the belt is going to go under this pulley, over this pulley, and then back under, over here. And so if you're holding this stiff, you can see that the motor is rotating as I move this along. So now the end clamp. And I'm just going to let the video keep rolling as I do this. Okay, and if you have this loose, it's easy enough to just slide this through. So what I would do is pull it as tight as you can, and then snug it down a teeny bit. Leave maybe a 1/4 inch at the end here for tensioning. And then once you've got it a little snug, pull it that last bit towards the end and tighten. I don't know if you noticed, I've got the belt over this anchoring finger and held down by my next finger. And that let me get it nice and snug. So a smooth action, but the belt is reasonably snug. Now, just to show you what those 3D printed parts are going to do. If you can see, the belt is under this wheel here, and let me just get a pointer here to make this a little easy. Okay, you can see how high this is. It's just at the edge of the bevel, okay? But if you look down at this end, it's against the bottom. So probably I would say a 2mm, 2.5mm drop from here to here. Now, as the item tracks closer, that angle, that difference becomes more acute. Okay, and so that is going to make for a slight discrepancy or skewing in the design when it's made. And this is something other people have brought to light. And somebody designed a very nice 3D part that will bolt in place. And instead of using a bolt to press this and clamp it against the bottom, there's 2 pieces that are going to clamp together and anchor this at the correct height so that the belt is at a uniform parallel angle from either side, and that eliminates any skewing. So as long as we're building something that's this precise, let's go all the way. So for the moment, I'm just going to grab, let's see here. Tend to keep twisty ties. Let's go. Cut this twisty in half. And I'm going to fold up this excess belt and anchor it with the twist tie, just so it's not flopping about. And down the road, I may just go ahead and trim that. But for the moment, I'm just gonna not cut that. So anyway, on to the next step. I need to create another one of these. So it is identical, and the motors are facing in the same direction. And I will pick back up in a moment when I've got this built. Okay, this is a good time to adjust these gears on the motor shaft. What you want to do is get it as centered as you think you can, and then roll it back and forth, and the belt will find its position. Now, if it's up against an edge, you probably want to adjust it slightly. As you can see, I can move mine back and forth, and the belt has found itself on the gear, not up against one edge or the other, and that's what you're looking for. Just want to make another recommendation regarding these nuts and bolts here. The nuts with the knurling, as I mentioned, I don't like this. I'd rather have washers and a nylon lock nut. When you are adjusting this so that it moves smoothly, what I did was stand this upright, put the bar in the center so that it wasn't trying to tip one side or the other, and then hold the wheel down and tighten. You may need to adjust. These are the holes that are slotted. So these are the two that you're going to make your adjustments on. The problem with the knurling, you want to, tighten things down, and then you want to test. If you tighten too hard right off the bat, that knurling is going to bite into the acrylic, and it's going to create little divots. And then if you need to make a slight adjustment, you need to move it up, and we're talking fractions of a millimeter to make the difference between it being too tight or too loose. Those little divots where the knurling bit into the acrylic are going to make it hard for you to get that little bit of a change there. The bolt's going to want to find those depressions again, or the nut's going to want to find those depressions. So don't do a solid tighten until you're sure you've got a nice smooth action. Once you've got that nice fluid action I showed you earlier, go ahead and crank down on them. Again, bearing in mind that it's acrylic, and you've also got these plastic spacers here. You don't want to over tighten and crush one of those or split it. So this seems like a very nice kit. It looks like it's good hardware. My only issues are, I wish there was more hardware, more washers, and I wish these knurled nuts were lock nuts instead. It wouldn't have made a big deal in the price. But that's also the kind of thing you can find at a local hardware store, or should be able to. Any good hardware store with a decent selection of metric hardware, and that can be harder, especially here in the States. A little harder to find metric stuff, but they're out there. So definitely something that I would think about replacing down the road. And as you can see, there's plenty of bolt protruding here. So adding a washer and a lock nut is not a problem. Unfortunately, you can't put washers on the inside, but really don't need to. The plastic bushing is providing a good surface. And, also these things don't have to be crushed tight, and you don't want to, because you don't want to split this. Okay, sorry if I'm going overboard on breaking the acrylic, but it can happen, certainly. And I'm always careful when I work with this type of material, because it does split. And, once it does, it's done. You're throwing away this part, and this isn't something you can just whip out. You'd have to call them and get them to send you a part, and you know, that could take weeks potentially, because they'll have to pull one off the line. You know, they may not even stock spares of things like this. They may just make enough of them for the run, and that's that. So things to bear in mind. Okay, here's where we're getting into a little bit of gray area. The blue aluminum plate that holds the laser has these 4 thumb screws. Go ahead and get those started. And then it gets bolted to this piece of clear acrylic. And the aluminum has 5 holes. Only 3 of them line up. Don't ask me why. So I have anchored it. This is the most logical way I can see that this works. Just like with these pieces here, there are 2 slotted holes out of the 4 that are going to hold the rollers. As you can see, there's 2 here, 1 on either side of the motor. And then there's 2 here, so that means that this piece has to orient like this. So I'm going to go ahead and get this piece started. This is a little hard to do. You kind of got to get everything started with one hand from below. And it's also the fact that it's, you know, set up like this, it's going to make it harder to get the adjustment done as far as play. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this here and start getting this put together, and then I'll pick up in a moment. An essential part of building this piece properly is going to be making sure that it's square. So what I'm going to do to tighten these 2 are the most important as far as getting that adjusted, because the ones that are down here are the ones on the vertical. As you can see, I can move them up and down. So placing it on a flat surface, and then I'm going to put a pair of these steel blocks on either side just to keep this in position. Unfortunately, that's a little tall, so I need to put something underneath it. Okay, so now I can tighten these 2, and I've got everything trued. Then I can slide in the aluminum rail and make my adjustments to the 2 sliding pieces. Have this assembled, and as you can see, got a nice smooth action. I mounted the motor sideways again, because the wire is going to have to come around to the board, and instead of pointing it down, or the only other direction I would do other than to left or to right, one or the other would be up. If I'm, you know, that might make using the whip kind of cable tether more feasible. We'll see. This involves a little trial and error, a little more so than the other piece to adjust properly, but it wasn't really that hard. Again, this is another area that the instructions are very vague on. There's virtually no text, just some images. So some things may get taken apart and put back together, and if I need to do any of that, I will cover it in detail for you. So this is where the last 2 anchors come into play, and the last piece of, excuse me, camera stand, the last strip of belt comes into play. So just like with the others, teeth side down. And I'm not going to make you watch as I do this tedious little process again. It's going to be the same thing, same way of tensioning. Anchor one side first, feed it through, and then tension it. Now it's time to assemble the frame. You need to make a left and a right side of the lower rails. So gather your parts together. You need, for each side, you need 2 of these pieces. You need 4 of the, these are the M5 by, I think, 1 or, excuse me, not 1, that would have been 1 centimeter, 10 millimeter. And the 2 of the 8s. The 8s are for the feet. So you're going to just push that through. You're going to slide one of these anchors in, and you're going to put one at either end. Okay? Then you're going to turn it on its side, and you're going to anchor one of these acrylic pieces like so. Okay? And that's going to create the mounting points for the left and right versus the front and back pieces, north, south, east, west, however you want to describe it. Again, you need 2 opposite pieces, a left side and a right side. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble this. Okay, 2 identical yet opposite pieces, left and right. When you are assembling this, make sure that this edge here is flush, because this frame, you want to make sure that it's square. You know, this is a precise piece of equipment, and the quality with which you assemble and attention to detail is going to determine how well it does what it's supposed to do. So just things to keep in mind. So now these side pieces are going to attach like so, and that will create the basic frame, and then the gantry will be mounted using the same way. The 2 holes here on either side of these plates will mount to the 2 holes either end of this gantry. So this gantry can travel forward and back with the 2 motors on these arms, and then it can go left and right on here, and that gives it the ability to track the laser anywhere within the mechanism. The next question is, again, which direction things go. So, you know, a lot of these things are very similar, so when you're putting things together, keep things like this in mind. If you recall, I faced the motors in a particular direction, so that the wires are going to come back this way. So that piece would go here. This one will go on this side. And as you can see, you know, things look very similar. It's easy to mix up. So pay attention as you're assembling. So this, see, so the desk is just never big enough. So the question is, okay, these motors need to be on the outsides. Okay, so that's going to go there. Just doing a little test mock-up here. This one's going to go here, and that means this bar should fit right in between. And looks like it's going to do exactly that. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.